autoricé. Nunca firmé.
I never authorized, I never signed, I never proposed, I never ordered that there be any attacks against a race, an ethnic group, or any religion.
Una raza, una etnia o una religión.
In a historic genocide trial, former U.S.-backed Guatemalan dictator Efrain Rios Montt proclaims his innocence. He's charged with overseeing the slaughter of more than 1,700 people in Guatemala's Mayan region after he seized power in 1982. A verdict in the trial could come today. We'll speak with investigative journalist Alan Nairn in Guatemala City.
This trial was a breakthrough, not just for Guatemala, but for the world. It was the first time that any nation had been able to use its domestic criminal courts to try a former head of state for genocide. Dozens upon dozens of Mayan survivors of the massacres risked their lives to come and testify.
Then we'll speak with Bahraini human rights activist Mariam Al-Khawaja. Her father and sister are currently jailed by the U.S.-backed monarchy.
The Bahraini regime today believes that they have international immunity. They believe that no matter what kind of human rights violations they commit, and they have been committing for the past 2 years, that they will not be held accountable internationally. And this is because of their relations with certain countries like the United States, like the United Kingdom.
Mariam Al-Khawaja will join us in studio here in New York. And is the FBI reading your email without a warrant? The ACLU obtains FBI documents that suggest the answer may be yes. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The death toll from the collapse of the garment factory building in Bangladesh has surpassed 1,000 as more bodies continue to be pulled from the rubble. In a rare moment of hope today, a woman was reportedly rescued alive 17 days after the building collapsed on top of her. According to Bangladesh's Daily Star newspaper, the woman, named Reshma, was nearly unscathed. Meanwhile, a haunting photo of the disaster has been circulating on the internet. The image shows two corpses in the rubble, a man and a woman intertwined in an embrace. The Bangladeshi photographer, Taslima Akhtar, wrote in a piece for Time magazine, quote, "Every time I look back to this photo, I feel uncomfortable. It haunts me. It's as if they are saying to me, we are not a number, not only cheap labor and cheap lives. We are human beings like you. Our life is precious like yours, and our dreams are precious too." An Ohio prosecutor says the man accused of raping 3 women he held captive for roughly a decade could face the death penalty. R.L. Castro has been ordered held on $8 million bond following his arraignment on charges of kidnapping and rape. His alleged victims, Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight, escaped earlier this week in a case that's captivated the country. Castro allegedly beat at least one of the women in order to terminate pregnancies that began while they were imprisoned in his home. The county prosecutor, Timothy McGinty, said Castro could face additional charges.
Based on the facts, I fully intend to seek charges for each and every act of sexual violence, rape, each day of kidnapping, every felonious assault, all his attempted murders, and each act of aggravated murder he committed by terminating pregnancies that the offender perpetuated against the hostages during this decade-long ordeal in violation of 290301 and 290309 of the Ohio Revised Code. My office of the county prosecutor will also engage in a formal process in which we evaluate whether to seek charges eligible for the death penalty. Capital punishment must be reserved for those crimes that are truly the worst examples of human conduct.
Minnesota House lawmakers have approved a bill legalizing same-sex marriage. The Senate's expected to pass the measure, and Governor Mark Dayton has said he will sign it into law. 11 other states and Washington, D.C. allow same-sex marriage, including Rhode Island and Delaware, which both passed laws this month. Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter has signed legislation he says is aimed at making the city the most LGBT-friendly in the world. The landmark bill includes the first-ever tax incentives for businesses that offer health coverage for life partners and transgender health needs. It extends rights to same-sex partners in medical decision-making and requires health insurance for city employees to cover transgender health costs, including sex change surgeries. The Heritage Foundation's continuing to face backlash from across the political spectrum over its report saying immigration reform would cost $6.3 trillion. The report came under fire, particularly after it was revealed its co-author has argued immigrants have lower IQs and that such claims should help steer immigration policy. In his 2009 Harvard University dissertation, co-author Jason Richwine wrote, quote, "No one knows whether Hispanics will ever reach IQ parity with whites, but the prediction that new Hispanic immigrants will have low IQ children and grandchildren is difficult to argue against. From the perspective of Americans alive today, the low average IQ of Hispanics is effectively permanent," he wrote. Politico reports Heritage Foundation is considering hiring a high-profile public relations firm to deal with the torrent of criticism. Afghan President Hamid Karzai says Afghanistan will allow the United States to keep 9 military bases in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of U.S. combat troops at the end of next year. For months, U.S. and Afghan leaders have been holding secret talks about the future of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Karzai made the remarks in a speech at Kabul University Thursday.
They want 9 bases all over Afghanistan, including Kabul, Bagram, Mazar, Jalalabad, Gardiz, Kandahar, Helmand, Shindin, Herat, and we agreed to give them these bases. Our conditions are that the U.S. should guarantee to bring security in our country and support Afghanistan's forces, as well as build up our economic infrastructure.
In a statement, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul said the United States is not seeking permanent military bases in Afghanistan, but instead hopes to use Afghan facilities. Facebook has removed a page containing rape jokes about female service members after a member of Congress complained to the Pentagon. Pictures on the page included a woman with a bruised face and the caption, "She burned the bacon only once," and another with the text, "This is my rape face." The U.S. Marines acknowledged in a statement, quote, "Based on complaints that have been received, both active duty and reserve Marines have been involved. All instances are referred to commands for appropriate action," unquote. In a letter to Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and Marine Corps General James Amos, Congressmember Jackie Speer said the page and others like it, quote, "contribute to a culture that permits and seems to encourage sexual assault and abuse," unquote. A Pentagon report released just this week estimated that 70 sexual assaults are committed each day within the U.S. military. Uruguay has sentenced a military general to 28 years in prison for the death of a professor nearly 4 decades ago. General Miguel Dalmau is first active general convicted of human rights violations during the country's dictatorship. He was in charge of a jail where political activist and professor Nibia Sabal Sagraray was found dead in 1974. Dalmau claimed she hanged herself from a peg that was just 4 inches above her head, but her autopsy showed signs of torture. His lawyer told the Associated Press he has already appealed Wednesday's decision. The son of former Pakistani Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani was kidnapped by gunmen Thursday in the latest act of attack ahead of Pakistan's election. Ali Haider Gilani was campaigning for a provincial assembly seat with the Pakistan People's Party when he came under attack. There were reports his secretary had been shot dead and that Gilani himself was shot and bleeding. No one's claimed responsibility, but his party has been targeted by the Pakistani Taliban. Gilani's father said the incident should not deter people from voting on Saturday.
My message to the masses is that they should show patience. They should remain patient. Let the law take its own course. Election is a national obligation. They should go out to the polls thinking of it as a national obligation, but our protest is there.
More than 110 people have been killed by Taliban attacks on secular parties in the past month in the run-up to Pakistan's election. The Taliban's threatened more attacks on Election Day. Among the candidates running for Prime Minister is cricket star Imran Khan, who was injured Tuesday when he fell from a mechanical lift at an election rally. You can go to our website at democracynow.org to see our past interviews with Imran Khan. Here in the United States, Senate Republicans blocked a confirmation vote on President Obama's pick to lead the Environmental Protection Agency by boycotting a committee meeting on Thursday. They're accusing Gina McCarthy of issuing unresponsive answers to more than 1,000 written questions about EPA policies and practices. McCarthy currently leads the EPA's Office of Air and Radiation after being easily confirmed for that post by the Senate in 2009. The move came one day after Senate Republicans delayed a vote on Obama's pick for Labor Secretary, Thomas Perez. Hundreds of fast food workers in Detroit are walking off the job today to demand a $15 an hour wage and the right to unionize without intimidation as such demands continue to spread to fast food restaurants and across the country. Employees from at least 60 stores, including McDonald's, Wendy's, and Subway, are expected to take part in the action. Detroit is the fourth city to see such a strike over the past 5 weeks after workers in St. Louis walked off the job earlier this week, following similar actions in Chicago and New York. In a victory for New York workers, the New York City councils passed a bill requiring businesses to grant 5 paid sick days per year. The bill was sponsored by Gail Brewer and hailed the measure as one of the most progressive pieces of legislation ever in history. The bill is a compromise that exempts smaller businesses and delays the requirement from coming into effect if the economy is bad. Sick pay legislation had been blocked for 3 years by Speaker Christine Quinn, who's running for mayor and had faced increasing pressure to bring the issue to a vote. Mayor Michael Bloomberg's vowed to veto the bill, but it appears to have enough support to override his veto. Just 3 council members voted against it Wednesday, with 45 voting in favor. Roughly 1.3 million workers in New York City are docked pay if they stay home sick. That's 4 in 10 employees. The bill would cover roughly 925,000 of them. Workers and civil rights activists are headed to Baltimore this weekend for a 2-day Poor People's Campaign and march to demand an end to police brutality, mass incarceration, and austerity, and to continue the work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This weekend marks the 45th anniversary of the Poor People's March on Washington, May 12, 1968. King helped launch the campaign but was assassinated weeks before the march on April 4, 1968. His widow, Coretta Scott King, and thousands of others marched on that Mother's Day weekend to call for an end to poverty. This weekend, marchers will walk 41 miles from Baltimore to Washington, D.C. And there are reports the grandson of Malcolm X has been killed in Mexico. A family friend said Malcolm Shabazz was 28 years old. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country.